Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. A surprise Monday morning announcement of the dissolving of the French cabinet. It's been only 4 months since Manuel Valls became the new prime minister. He stays on. However, the left flank of his party is gone, including the outspoken economy minister, Arnaud Montebourg. In part one of our discussion, we heard just one of his parting shots. With us to talk about it, French Socialist Member of Parliament, Philippe Cordery. Also with us, Agnès Michel of the French Green Party, formerly in coalition with the Socialists. And also joining us, Jacob Hesler, co-founder of big data company Tiny Clues, and France24.com editor-in-chief Sylvain Attal. Just before the break, we were talking about how it all looks. Philippe Cordery, I know that next weekend is the end of summer seminar for the Socialist Party. How's that going to go?
Well, obviously, it'll be part of the discussions.
Talk about hanging out your laundry, dirty laundry in public.
Yeah, but that's exactly what we shouldn't be doing. Both sons of mine play rugby, and they have a trainer who always says, "We'll win together, you'll lose together, you'll die together." And I think that's exactly what we should be telling ourselves in the Socialist Party. I don't care who wants to be the candidate for the next presidential election. I want us to succeed in our economic policy. And all the rest of the discussions should not take place at the moment. And I think if we don't use this weekend in La Rochelle to understand that if we don't sort of manage our economic policy to have results and to really get our act together all together, then we'll all lose together. So I think it's a collective responsibility of the Socialist Party, of the left also, in the whole of the left. If we don't succeed, we'll have Sarkozy or worse coming to power in 2017 or earlier. And if that's what the left want, then we should continue like that. If not, we should get our act together and get the economy working.
I think the problem is that the Socialist Party is a ghost. I mean,
is the problem, wait a minute, Sylvain Attal, is the problem the Socialist Party, or is the problem President Hollande, who doesn't wield a tight grip on his troops?
What he's trying today is...
Tightening the group is something that you cannot succeed when there's not the minimum of the sense of responsibility and collective responsibility, as you say, Philippe, that has totally disappeared from the ranks of to my sense, in the ranks of the Socialist Party. I mean, there's too many hates against Valls, too many calculation. I mean, it's honestly I think the problem is the Socialist Party, because what they should do is, for example, the Socialist Party, for example, hasn't held a Congress in 2 years. The last Congress was in 2012. And usually in democracies, it's the place where the political line is set. There's a debate, there's a vote, there's a majority, and there's a minority, and there's a leader. And then the debate is off, especially if you're in power, if you have the responsibility of the country, and that's the situation here. If the Socialist Party were in the opposition, at least you can understood that there's what's happening in the UMP, for example, with the guerre des chefs, etc. But the Socialist Party has the responsibility of the country. And they had, they didn't have a Congress.
On that point, do you fault François Hollande for that? Do you think the French president...
No, because, I mean, he set a line, he set a direction. He won the primaries. He's now in power, he's the president, he's there to fix the line. And the majority then
He promised on the campaign trail he wouldn't meddle in his party's policies, but that has happened on occasion where we've seen him be the one who's consulted on some of these matters.
No, I mean, the problem is more of a collective responsibility. How can we be united? Can we not show the whole world of our divisions? We're there. What people are expecting from us is to get the economy right once again. It's not to have our sort of spectacle in front of everyone else. I mean,
all right, let's talk.
Congresses for that. Sylvain's right.
Let's talk about the economy. One comment coming in to us, it is unreal that Hollande would rather dissolve the French government than keep his anti-austerity promises. So says Joanna. And it was economic policy and the call for the government to show tougher love to the Germans that sparked the latest rift within the cabinet, Vikram Singh explains.
Europe is facing its third recession in 5 years, and one of its weakest performers, France, has been plunged into a political crisis by its persistently underperforming economy. Unemployment has risen above 10%, and the modest growth target of 1% has already been slashed in half. And now 2 of François Hollande's ministers have publicly attacked his spending and tax cuts and demanded a rejection of the Eurozone's austerity policies. Arnaud Montebourg, the economy minister, has been the most vocal critic, calling this weekend for a change in course.
There are calls from all over the world to correct the economic mistakes that all the European states are making at the same time. Let me remind you that France's economy has been at a halt for the past 6 months. Zero growth. It's worrying on the ground. Tensions are running high.
The so-called rebellion comes as the popularity ratings of Hollande and his Prime Minister Manuel Valls have plunged to historically low levels. Hollande, however, has insisted on sticking to a series of reforms, which include a simplification of the income tax bands and measures to revitalize France's floundering housing sector, to little effect so far. While the rebel ministers largely support those measures, they've asked for a push in public spending and for policies that would lead to greater household consumption.
I don't think that there are really two opposing points of view. I think on one side there is a prime minister who wants to respect his previous commitments, no matter what. And on the other side, an economy minister who says that these commitments aren't a priority, and the real priority is to push for greater economic activity.
Even though France is currently engaged in its steepest spending cuts for 40 years, it is unlikely to meet its own end-of-year deficit target of 4% of GDP, already a point higher than the 3% required for Eurozone member countries.
Jakob Hessler, by the way, we have a reaction out of Germany. Actually, it was out of Spain, because Germany's chancellor and her conservative counterpart from Spain together quietly encouraging Hollande to stay the course. Let's take a listen first to Angela Merkel.
I hope the French president will succeed with his reform agenda. He is taking very brave steps. But I will not comment on the facts, because that is an issue that must be dealt with by France.
She's not commenting, but she's saying he's taking very brave steps. Jakob Hessler, how are people across the Rhine looking at all this?
I think they are worried in part because of the political mess that they're seeing, and I think that is the biggest worry, is that they see a situation where there are some measures that in general they seem not so far off of what both left and right in Germany actually think to be quite sensible things to do. Now I will not judge on them. And then they see that around those, the country and the political elite is incapable of getting organized and of organizing itself. And that now you can interpret it, the tactics have won again over any of the fundamental questions, and that we are basically already in a pre-presidential race and we'll get a game of chicken, which will be either you dissolve, you lose your seat as a socialist député, because Hollande can say, okay, if you Frondeurs play hardball, I will dissolve, and many of you will lose your seat, because in this current state, if we had new elections, 30, 40, 50, 60 of you won't be there. And that is a nice way of doing politics, right?
And I think that there's a lot of member of parliament, socialist member of parliaments, that are on the verge of doing another calculation, saying, okay, if we're going to lose the election, let's lose the election now. Let's go for cohabitation. Let's the right taking the unpopular measures. Take the unpopular measures, and we're going to come back in 5 years with another leftist agenda, and as irrealistic like we've seen before. And excuse me to add something. There's another point where Montebourg was wrong when he's mentioning, for example, the Economic Central Bank, that Mario Draghi is easing the monetary policy, easy. And the euro has dropped. We had a few months ago. We had an euro at drop, 137 against the dollar. Maybe it's 125.
Still too high.
It's still, maybe it's still too high, but I mean, it's not.
It's just not true that the Germans, and actually for that matter, the sort of conservative Germans, are actually hammering Draghi by saying, you're playing the, you know...
But he's going on the direction that Montebourg wants.
Exactly,
I mean, he's going on that direction.
Yeah,
and you
but
cannot say
Hollande
that
is
the
not
euro...
investing in Europe.
Sorry?
What?
Hollande is not investing in Europe. You don't have anyone in the technocracy. You don't have dialogues as it should be. I don't know if
Who's
you
put
really...
growth on the agenda in Europe? It's for the last 2 years, I've been saying at every European Council we need more growth in Europe and trying to reorientate the
Because
European
growth,
policies.
you can invoke growth as a god, I don't know, but what you need to do is to reconnect with the actual economy, and it's not with the say-so that you're doing it, because it's only used by big firms that are destroying jobs for the last 30 years, and you know it, and you should actually know it, and the fact is nothing is done on the ground where the firms, the small one, are doing the creation of jobs. We know that. We all know that. We hear that since 20 years. I'm young, but I've heard that my whole life. We know that the small firms are creating jobs, the big one is destroying jobs. And we give how much? Says now 9 billions plus the Crédit Impôt Recherche this year, which is only used even by banks. Innovation in banks. We give money to big banks. You know, you remember the one that almost made the whole economy in France collapse, and in the rest of the world, we give them money. In that, we give now 15 billions. For what? Not one job. So we don't have an economical vision.
Inside the parliament
Give
to
me
monitor.
an economical vision.
To monitor.
Give me investment in the future. Give hope to people. Else, it won't be the right. It won't be the UMP. It will be the Front National. And then it won't be a lot at all. It won't be waiting to see what's happening and small calculation, political calculation. It will be really the mess. Look at what they're doing in the city that socialists have lost. It's critical. So we should have a grip on what we really want to do in an economy and in the institution, because now the little game that is played between the president, the prime minister, the deputy, I mean, it's pathetic.
When I'm listening to Agnès, I think she's absolutely right. I think it's really a pity that the Green Party is not participating in the government, because I mean, you know,
we
it's
tried.
exactly
but they didn't hear us.
Some might come back.
The truth.
It's not what I'm hearing when I'm listening to, for example, to Cécile Duflot, which is doing...
The former housing minister.
Former housing minister with his catastrophic law on housing. And she's excuse me, it's not at all what you're saying. But she's doing a Mélenchon-style discourse. I mean, it's
far left-style discourse. I want to get back to the point that you made, Jakob Hester, because it surprised me. You're saying that the Germans, they're not too bothered about the substance, they're more just bothered about...
No, I'm not saying that
the lack of disorganization.
I'm not saying that
so
they're not bothered.
The French talk about raising the deficit further and
what they're worried about what they observe is that there is a program that from the outside to them looks sort of what they also think wouldn't be too bad, and then they see, and it reconfirms all the prejudices they may have, which is that France cannot reform, which is even when they have someone who has sort of a program that at least directionally is not wrong, before they even start looking at whether it works, it already gets sabotaged by the own people. And that's what's most worrying. And actually, it's not, I think, not only worrying to Germans, and I think it's a structural, political, general problem about the French political system. And I think you mentioned it, is the absence of, you know, a more parliamentary style.
And you know, this is
majority type.
This is another surrealistic point with Montebourg, when he understates that, for example, France should do more deficit, for example. It's a point that it's already made. We are not going to meet the deficit objective. Sapin has already said that. We're not going to meet the objective. I mean, it's not, you know, it's almost crazy to hear that today. Of course, France is not going to meet the objective. The Germans know it.
Of course,
perfectly.
Arnaud Montebourg is a savvy politician, And if he's bashing the German Chancellor, it's because he's getting
personal,
mileage out of it, and because the German Chancellor is an unpopular person.
It's
right
personal
now.
calculation. That's it.
Yes, and because the German right has some of the responsibility of where we are today economically. I mean, let's not forget the 10 years of pure austerity that we had in Europe, which Sarkozy and Angela Merkel had together. So there is a European problem. I mean, Arnaud Montebourg is right.
Correct me. The Social Democrats are in the government in Germany now. It's not
Yes,
only
yes,
the
yes.
right.
No, but Sigmund Gabriel does not have exactly the same discourse as Angela Merkel, and there's a debate inside the German government today. But if you read François Hollande's interview,
But he's not leaving the government.
But they were
no, because they can work together, and I think we could work together, and we could work together with the Greens.
We tried. We had an
and I'm sure there will be
agreement,
Greens in the
and it
next
wasn't
government,
respected. It wasn't
which
respected
will
during 2
show
years.
the coherence of the
maybe
government. But
that's
let me
an issue,
say a word
actually.
on the European policy, because I think it's extremely important. If we read François Hollande's interview in Le Monde, it's very clear what he wants to do in Europe, which is to support a big investment plan, because we need Europe to be the motor of the growth, and Europe can.
When you say a big investment
European-
plan, a big stimulus pact.
a big stimulus pact of sort of 300 billion euros, which was proposed by
There's enough money in the agricultural
President
policy
Commission.
to do all kinds of intelligent future investments. And by the way,
The European
not ruin
Union
the
is not
environment. That would
indebted.
be
We
so
can
bad.
also sort of create investment programs. If we look at what has been done, because things have been done on the European level, there has been a capitalization of the European Investment Bank, which has enabled also some investment, especially in France and in
But
many
Philippe, who is
local,
going to listen to France
communities.
after this kind of spectacle?
But it's not only France. Renzi is saying the same thing. I mean, there's a group of countries which today do not accept the austerity policy anymore. And I think things are really moving, including the President of the Commission,
There's no
Jean-Claude Juncker,
austerity
is... there was for 10 years in Europe. There was a
there's
real
not-
austerity
but not
plan.
any longer.
Today, we have sort of reorientated Europe, and it's beginning to work. So exactly
Okay, so
what...
we can-
Moscovici is showing that we're really interested, that the socialists are really interested in
The former
Europe.
finance minister.
I mean,
If we have a commissioner which is
Yeah.
in charge of
I've
growth
never-
policy in Europe,
I've
it
never
will be a
heard-
big
I've
success
never
for the European
heard
economy.
Moscovici showing us a tiny piece of a plan for Europe. Maybe he did it in privacy,
He was
but
a-
politically he never did. And what we are doing, and it's not only socialist, it's almost every kind of European deputy except ours, because they really love their jobs and they really love Europe. The rest of us in France, it's like you do it because you failed in another election. You know that it's true. And you know that they're not putting high administration, French people in high administration in Europe. You have a lot of studies showing that. And that is the problem, because we do not, we are so happy to have fun together that we do not invest in Europe, invest politically.
We could invest
so
more,
we
I
don't
agree.
invest
But Pierre Moscovici
we don't
started off as
invest-
European minister,
because
was member of
he
the
failed
European
as a
Parliament.
minister, as a French minister.
come on.
It's
He started
It's a
off
payback.
on
All
European
right,
issues.
You won't have the
Let's-
job he was looking for.
Sylvain Attal, you're talking about how the best laid plans of mice and men will not be able to be implemented because France and its president both have right now a poor image problem.
Yeah, I think there's an image problem.
How do you change all that?
I really don't know. I mean, the situation is really catastrophic.
When you
I mean,
saw
there
the
was-
French president today speaking, what were you
Yeah, under
thinking?
the rain. I mean, there's a communication problem too. I mean, it's to add on that. I mean, just as it was not enough with this
New
showdown.
glasses don't do.
It's almost impossible to answer your question. The fact is that, for example, we were noticing that the Germans, for example, despite all their differences, they're trying to work together, the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, for the good of the people. And it's not. Of course, it's not always easy for a socialist, for example, to conduce a policy is not 100% agreeing on. But the fact is, I'm looking to this picture of Hollande today marching on the pace of de Gaulle, for example. All these people from the Ile-de-Seine who left almost everything to join London. They were the first to join de Gaulle for the resistance. It was a complete sense of honor and despise for their own interest. And today we have people in the political class in France that are only looking for their political future and not thinking a second to the situation of the country and the people. It's terrible. It's terrible to see that.
Either way, is this, again, as Agnès Michel was saying earlier, is this all fodder for the National Front, for the far right in this country, which is going to continue its rise?
But we still have a chance of returning that, and to give a little bit of optimism after what you said. Okay, we will have now a new government. The fact is that Arnaud Montebourg has left, and maybe others. So this government will have the responsibility to implement the policy, and we can succeed. As you said very rightly earlier on, you can't change an economic policy in 1 year or 2 years. And let's see where we came from.
But
after you can change the policy, we can see the results, and it takes time. It takes time. So we need patience. We need to continue. And if we change policy every 6 months, then we're sure to fail.
Fiscality changes like 3 or 4 times a year. Economy strategy, when you can have a grip on it, changes almost as many times. About what they are doing, first, you don't agree with the housing law that Cécile Duflot did. Anyway, the government did let her do the law. And then they're not doing the decret.
You're right.
So, I mean,
they're not applying the law.
It's totally confusing.
The contradictions are always. So the issue is communication, transparency, and more democracy. And please do change the institutions, because it's not working, because de Gaulle is dead. And he was the only one that could handle the Fifth Republic. So please do that at least. And then you can go with your mind like saying, I've done my job right, you know?
Can we first get the economy right before we talk about institutions?
But
I don't know. You should do both in the same time. It will be a real challenge, but a good one, you know?
I agree with Agnès. There's probably a regime crisis behind that. There's a political crisis, there's an economic crisis, and then there's a regime crisis. And the problem with the Fifth Republic, especially since the quinquennat, the shortage of the political mandate.
And I did vote for it, and I was wrong, really wrong.
I did too.
Yeah.
One comment coming into us, the panel seems unaware there's an economic crisis in the European Monetary Union. Nobel Prize-winning economists say austerity is causing it. You can compound that perhaps with a second worry, which is growing in most places, and that is of deflation. The latest inflation figures very low indeed. Jakob Hessler, are the Germans aware that the rest of Europe is worried about this?
Hard. I live in France, so I may have a slightly jaded view of the situation. I think that the hole in which the German economy plunged in the last quarter has woken up a few people, and the economic confidence has been very low in Germany among the entrepreneurs, much lower than expected, due also in part to the Ukraine crisis and to sort of global events, not necessarily sort of our, Western Europe. But I think there's a growing awareness that, and the problem though is deflation. We are already the market is already flooded with liquidity. It's not the liquidity, the usual. I mean, if conservative German monetary politicians were right, we would already have hyperinflation given the amount of liquidity that has been pumped into the market. And the fact is, surprisingly, that's not the case. So the real question is, how are we going to get out of that mess? And it's very clear that monetary stimulus and devaluation, all these kinds of nice little things, won't work, because so far they've all been tried and they don't work. So I think I like your idea about trying to invest in Europe. Look, take some money from the agriculture policy. It eats, I don't know how much percent of all the money we spend in Europe is agriculture. Take it and invest in infrastructure.
There's a lot of liquidity, but don't you agree with that? There's a problem with the banking system, no?
Yeah, oh,
the money is not going to
no, but that's because liquidity is not capital. We live in an absurd world where the market is flooded with liquidity, but there's not enough capital, and we are witnessing a deleveraging of the economy overall, which over time makes the availability of capital to the business.
And who's if not the banks have the power to take the liquidity and put it and transform it into capital.
Either ways, for these big ticket reforms, you need strong leadership, which is one of the issues that we've been discussing, and we're going to see whether the proof is in the pudding in the days to come when that new government is announced, to see whether or not the French president does get those needed votes. Philip Corder, you're saying it's going to be a cakewalk getting that.
Cakewalk. I mean, we will have a majority in the parliament to support the new government. I'm quite confident, and that we'll have a government which represents
they won't have a majority against them.
All right,
it's different. No, you won't have the majority against you.
And we'll leave it there.
So there'll be a majority to govern. And I hope very much that we'll have also some Greens participating in the government.
All right, the offer is there. Philip Cordery, many thanks. I want to thank Sylvain Attal. I also want to thank Agnès Michel and Jakob Hessler. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.